Before we start the video, do me a quick favor. Comment your car color below. You'll know why I asked you that in a moment. Next time you're sitting at a red light, take a look at the cars around you. Not the make or model. Look at the color. Gray, white, black, silver, more gray, white, black. Maybe a blue one. Maybe you'll see a red one somewhere in the distance. It's not your imagination. It's not a local quirk or personal bias. Across the United States, Europe, and most of the developed world, cars on the road have been getting dramatically less colorful for about 30 years. The reason why turns out to have very little to do with taste, quite a lot to do with something most people would never think to connect to the color of a car. It's the economy. In 1996, only 47% of new cars sold in the United States were white, black, gray, or silver. The other 53% were something else: red, green, yellow, whatever. Those are colors that require a decision. They express something. In 2025, that number inverted almost completely. Grayscale colors now account for more than 80% of the entire car market. Red and green, which together represented about a third of the market back in '96, account for less than 1 in 10 vehicles now. Something happened to the color of the cars on the road, and it happened gradually enough that most people never even noticed that it happened. And to understand what's happening now, it helps to go back to the beginning. The first mass-produced cars were mostly black. It's not because Henry Ford didn't believe in color, but because black asphalt enamel dried faster than any other paint available. Faster drying meant faster production. It was economics, not aesthetics. Then came the economic boom of the 20s. With prosperity came color. Manufacturers began to offer red, blue, green, yellow. Buying a colorful car, that was an expression of optimism. Then in 1929, the crash, the depression. Colors retreated, not entirely, but noticeably. Conservative choices returned. The palette contracted with the economy that drove it. The post-war boom of the late 1940s and 1950s brought color back and more of it. Automobile manufacturers established formal color advisory panels that studied fashion, pop culture, and consumer psychology to develop palettes that matched the mood of a prosperous and optimistic society. Cars got fins and chrome and colors with names like tropical turquoise and matador red. The 1960s and 70s went even further. Avocado green, harvest gold, burnt oranges. Colors that today look almost alien on a car, but at that time, it was completely natural. The culture was expansive, experimental, pushing outward in every direction, including the showroom. Then across the 80s and 90s, slowly, gradually, the palette began contracting again. Silver emerged as a dominant color in the late 1990s and early 2000s, riding the tech boom's association of silver with the future. And then in 2008, the financial crisis hit. Gray arrived, and it stayed. The first mechanism's the most rational, but it's also a trap. When people get financially anxious and when they're uncertain about the future, car purchase feels like a risk rather than a pleasure, so they think about resale value. The conventional wisdom, largely accurate, is that neutral colors hold their value better than expressive ones. There are simply more potential buyers for a gray car than for a bright orange one. So during recessions and periods of economic uncertainty, car buyers chose gray and silver and white. Not because they wanted those colors, but because they're hedging, making a financial decision dressed up as an aesthetic one. And here's the trap. When everybody makes the same calculation simultaneously, the market fills with gray cars, and that makes gray cars common, which slightly undermines the resale value of gray. But by then the behaviors become a habit, reinforced by the fact that everybody around you is also driving gray, which makes gray feel normal, and the color feel conspicuous. The anxiety becomes a norm. The norm then becomes the aesthetic. The second mechanism is structural, largely invisible to the consumer. In the US, car dealers typically maintain roughly 60 days of inventory on their lots. They stock the colors they can move quickly. Colors they can move quickly are, by definition, the ones most people are already choosing. Safe, neutral, conservative. This creates a feedback loop that operates entirely independently of what individual buyers might actually prefer. A buyer who wants a particular shade of blue might be told it's a 6-week special order. Gray's available right now. Today wins. So the market data, and that's the data that tells the manufacturers what colors to produce and dealers what to stock, systematically biased towards whatever was popular last month. Color preferences get suppressed not because people don't have access to them, because the supply chains learn to treat anything expressive as a risk. Gray car sitting on the lot's not just a product of demand, it's a producer of demand. The third mechanism is the most interesting, but it's also the hardest to quantify. Car color is a form of public self-expression. Unlike most of your choices, like the food you eat and books you read, music you listen to, your car's color is visible to thousands of people every day. It says something. It's in a small but real way. It's about how you want to be seen. In periods of collective anxiety, people tend to want to be seen less. They want to retreat. They want to avoid anything that might read as showing off or optimism or confidence in a future that doesn't feel that secure. Volkswagen color designer described it this way: color preferences really reflect unique social and cultural trends and even geography of a region. During uncertain economic times, people tend to make conservative choices across the board. Car color is no exception. The individual choice, gray, practical, easy to maintain, doesn't show dirt, it's a collective signal across millions of purchases. It says, we're not feeling expansive right now. We're not reaching outward. We're going to keep our head down. Cars on the road are a mood ring for the entire economy. What makes this more than just an economic curiosity is what it reveals about how collective behavior works. None of the millions of people who bought gray cars during the post-2008 decade thought of themselves as participating in some collective act. Each one made what felt like a personal, rational, individual choice. Practical, sensible, safe. But when you add up all those individual choices, you get this landscape of gray. The gray cars already on the road signaled that gray was normal self-reinforcing. This is the same mechanism that drives fashion trends, architectural styles, the vocabulary of any given era, the emotional register of a generation's music. Nobody decides that this decade's sound will be more melancholy than the last one. The economic and cultural conditions of the decade shape the choices of the artists, which shape the catalog, which shapes the ear of the listener, which shapes what feels right to the next artist. Collective mood produces collective output. Collective output reinforces collective mood. The gray car, both the symptom and the cause. There's something genuinely strange about this. The color of the cars on the road is not a record of what people wanted. It's a record of what people felt able to want, given certain economic conditions, supply chain, and what everybody else was already doing. The want and the fear, they're indistinguishable. The gray car that somebody bought because they loved gray, it's the same. It's the same as the guy that bought the gray car because they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to sell it later. The market won't tell them apart. But the pattern shows it. When people feel secure, they reach for a color. And when they don't, they buy gray. Every time. It's across every economic cycle for which we have data. No exception. Something has started to shift though. After about 3 decades of the march toward gray, the grayscale market share sort of stabilized around 2020. It's about 80% rather than climbing higher. In the years since, colors begun to return, like green, that's the fastest growing chromatic color on the market. Blues are kind of steady. And BASF, they're the ones that make all the paint colors. 2025, they reported that the share of colored car paints had risen by almost 2 percentage points, so that's small in absolute terms, but that is a directional signal. And VW's color designer put it directly, the future's getting colorful for sure. If the pattern holds, and it has held across every cycle so far. This is what a recovery in collective confidence looks like. Not in GDP figures or employment data, but in the color that people want for their car. So the next time you're sitting at the red light and you look at the cars around you and you see the gray, white, black, silver, you're not looking at consumer preference. You're looking at a record of how people who bought the cars felt about the future when they signed the paper. That's a record of what they felt able to want, given everything the world was telling them. It's a color of caution. It's hedging. Want something, but you don't want to reach that far for it. Blue car, red car, green car. That's the color of somebody who felt for whatever reason that it's safe to want that it was okay to be seen. Car color is a confession, not about who you are. It's about when you live. If you like this and other stuff like this channel's here. Subscribe. Thanks for watching.